call the meeting of the September meeting of the Hamilton Central School Board to order. This meeting is going to be videotaped. A Board of Education meeting is a meeting held in public, but it's not a public meeting. Anyone that wishes to address the board may do so during one of our 2 public participation periods. We will determine whether we're going to respond now or save the response until later. Anyone addressing the board needs to come up here, state your name, so that the audience members and the videotape will know who you are. Any questions should be directed to the board and not to the administration or staff. Anyone who wishes to have an item placed on the board agenda may do so by contacting us via email about 5 days prior to the meeting. It's up to the board to determine what's relevant to discuss. Are there any additions to the agenda? I have 2 changes I'd like to make to the agenda. I would like to take policy review for policy 1022 and move that to the October meeting, and that would be item 6.6 moved to October. And in its place, I would like to discuss forming a policy committee of the board.
Clarifying question, that's policy 1020, not 1022.
Okay, why do I keep saying 1024?
It says 1020, 1022, and 1024. It's somewhere in that category.
You know why? No school has the same numbering. Every school has different numbering. So as I'm reading through policies from other schools, they're using different numbers. So 1020, okay, 1020 for the record. So may I have a motion to approve the agenda as modified?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of the August 11th meeting of the board?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
We'll do the consent agenda through 4.1 as one motion. I would like to read 4.1 out loud. That's included in this motion. The first one is a motion to rescind the appointment of Phil Kaida as the JV girls soccer coach for the 2016-17 season due to lack of numbers to field a team as recommended by the superintendent. Also, a motion to approve the appointment of Brian Rose as the boys varsity soccer coach at 8.65% of step 20 as recommended by the athletic director and superintendent. And a motion to approve the appointment of Mike Jones as modified boys soccer coach at 4.5% of step 6 as recommended by the athletic director and superintendent. Any discussion?
In the general fund, 830 map, there's a line item for the village electric. There were several of them, all stating the same description, but one was extremely higher than the others. Why is there difference?
Our bill's broken down by building, so they bill us. Each separate building on these grounds is metered separately. So the higher number is the electric bill for this main school building, then there's the bus garage, and then there's the press box.
Okay.
So it's 3 separate buildings. It's illegal.
Okay.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, and the JV girls soccer, do we have any knowledge of, we checked in at all on what's led to the drop in numbers? I mean, that's a program that has a large feeder program of ASO soccer and has had a long tradition of excellence even to the point of state championship. And it just surprises me that we now have no girls soccer at all. We looked into why.
I did speak to Phil, who is, if he's not here now, which I don't see it, I expect him here. He knows all of these numbers and some of these questions came up, but it just is a matter of enrollment and demand and the number of kids who showed up. So if I remember correctly, he needed 13 and he had 10. And so that's where we are with that. But I expect him to be here and he can speak specifically to a lot of the numbers question as it relates to sports.
Are those 10 girls playing at Morrisville then, or you don't know?
Will
You
you
forget.
know?
Will we?
Does Bill know?
Yeah, I think a majority, I don't know the exact number, but
Okay.
a majority of them did go over
Okay.
and are playing JV and varsity.
Okay. And the modified team is still here
Correct.
and has good numbers?
Yeah, I think they're
Or
solid.
have they?
Yeah,
Yeah, I was gonna say, because there was this dip, this has been coming, there was this dip, and then we were expecting this group
Go up.
that's now modified was going to pull it back into the district, because there was this dip in girls participating in sports. So that's what had
yeah,
been,
it just happened to be that they're in
on the-
successive grades. the-
yeah.
The dip in female participation
We also.
for certain sports.
Yeah, so I guess that's my question is, I understand that these things will ebb and flow, but I guess I'm looking, and we probably don't know the answer without doing some research into it, is what has led this group to have such strong participation for so long and have that big of a dip? I mean, it just doesn't, it's not just numbers. There's a reason why girls are choosing not to play.
They're splitting between volleyball
I
now.
was gonna say,
Now
that
that
does-
volleyball
Yeah.
is a fall sport.
That was gonna be my next question, is
Yeah.
whether volleyball was part of the
I mean, we have
program.
cross-country, field hockey with Morrisville, soccer, and volleyball. All is fall sports for girls to choose from when we have a very small, in this cohort of the current 7th, 8th, 9th grades, the proportion of girls to boys in each of those classes is skewed towards boys.
And we have 0 girls playing field hockey this year.
Yeah.
How many girls playing volleyball?
I think there's 8 on varsity and maybe 8 on JV.
Is there a modified?
Modified plays in the winter. Split season
Oh.
of basketball.
Okay, got it.
And those
I did
numbers
know
are
that.
typically high.
Any other discussion? All in favor? We have an update of the strategic planning initiative.
Sure. As I indicated before, there are a lot of issues, and some self-imposed and some imposed, facing Hamilton School District. And some of them are Budget Advisory Committee, Secondary Scheduling Committee, International Program, and so just some of those are some of the things that we have to make some decisions on. About 2 years ago, there was a proposition to merge districts, and that obviously was defeated. And so the question is, how do we maximize what we have, keep as much as what we can, and move into the future with the understanding that that the current model that we have been operating under is just not sustainable. When you look at financially taking $90,000 for the last, with the exception of last year, out of reserves to kind of fund the budget, that's not sustainable. So we have to look at ways to have revenue. We have to look at how we're spending revenue. And so all of that led me to say, with so many things in front of us, what is the best way of moving forward that is truly shared and transparent leadership, but people have voice, different constituents. And so that led us to a strategic plan. So since we've had that discussion in July, I want to share with you some of the things that have been happening behind the scenes. And so obviously we have community partners. I met with the CEO of Community Memorial Hospital, Mr. Fidel, who has gone through as a professional at least 3 strategic planning initiatives. He's been a CEO for a while. Colgate has the Upstate Institute. At a recent meeting, somebody mentioned a couple of organizations. Upstate Institute wasn't part of it, but I happen to know Ms. Dudrick, and we talked about how they might be able to assist us. Obviously, they don't do strategic planning, but they would be able to, if we were interested, possibly help us with data collection. Thought in Action was mentioned. I had a good conversation with Mary Galvez, but this is not something that they engage in. They have worked with HCS in the past with another employee on innovation, which is really what they do. She explained it as, they have like a Shark Tank type of operation. At the end, they fund viable businesses. Cove spoke with Ms. Nassi and her director, Krista Salit, And of course, they don't engage in that, but when Colgate did do their last strategic plan, they participated in it. And they did it, so they participated. So that's in terms of the community partners, in terms of just tapping into resources. There are more people who are on my list. Met with, I'm drawing a little blank, where am I now? Joe, I missed 4 fifths, right? I guess I looked. Probably why. So I've had these discussions in terms of, is this something that's viable? Now, I have my own lived experiences, and my own lived experience is like premium organizations operate from strategic plans, right? And so in terms of saying who could do this for us, I've had multiple conversations. Former district superintendent Alan Pohl. And I'm going to do this in a way that shows how I've gotten to where we are on the back end. Alan Pohl, as you know, did the shared services study for us with Miss Jessica, I think Dr. Jessica Cohen. Mr. Pohl was not, it wasn't something he had interest in doing, but he did tell me he did refer me to call Miss Cohen, who of course I've gotten to know, who's not available. She has an availability issue. I did speak to Trustee Stephanie Fidel, not knowing that this is something that she's done and privately does, who respectfully said, no thank you. I'm not interested in doing your strategic plan. But she did refer me to someone who is very much respected, Virginia Tyler, who has other priorities right now and is not available to do it. She referred me to a Greg Collins, which is good. And Greg and I had lengthy conversations, and he even has given me a proposal. I spoke with Ms. Markoff, Karen Markoff, who is the person, if you recall, has been helping us with she did help us with our district comprehensive improvement plan, and so, which we signed off and had to send to Albany. And her company, PLC and Associates, within a day or so will be giving us a proposal. And I spoke to Sean Brady, who has a company called Prism, was referred to me by another superintendent, and he's done at least two strategic plans in this region. And so once I have all 3 plans, I'll send them to you, and I'll have a recommendation based on my best judgments on what's out there. So that's the update. I actually was hoping to have them for this meeting and to make a recommendation, because the good ones are booked out, right? That's generally how it works. So, but I did want to wait to get the one from Ms. Markoff's organization, PLC and Associates, and see that, because we're familiar with their work also. A note on finance. As you know, as a focus district, we get money which has to be used for the improvement of the school district. So we, excuse me, received $25,000 to identify problems. What are some of the issues in ACS, for lack of a better word? We'll get at least another $50,000 for this school year, in which which you have to use towards bettering your organization, to which we would be using, if we chose to go with one of the candidates, to spend that money. It would not be money that's budgeted for in our budget. This would be something that's sent to us as a result of being a focus district, and so there's no impact on the budget. And one of the things you can't do with that focus money is hire staff, because that's a recurring obligation. That's not sustainable. So that's my update in terms of strategic plan and where we're at right now. I did also have a good conversation with HCA president and just kind of shared some of what I just shared with you. And after I get you the 3 proposals, I'll sit down with him and maybe a couple other people, certainly my leadership team, and I'll take some input, but ultimately I'll make a recommendation and be able to provide a rationale as to why I'm going in that direction.
Thank you. Typically, this time of the year in September, we'd be working on goals. But I just want to put it out there. I didn't put it on the agenda for this meeting. It seems like if we're going to be doing a strategic plan and people in the building are going to be defining their vision, that we should maybe wait until after that if we're going to change anything. And I'll put it on if somebody wants. I'll put it on for October. But otherwise, let's wait.
Do we
Okay.
together?
Okay. All right, this is our first opportunity for public communication or public participation. So if you have anything you want to share or ask, please come on up, state your name, and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Come on.
I think I know the answer to this question is going to be a
Can you state your name?
Travis Haynes. I'm wondering what the board's thoughts are on the concept of full-day pre-K. If it's something to look into, it seems like some districts are starting to lean that way, and it seems like it's most beneficial to students from just from personal experience. But I know it's tough because that's a big money deal. You probably have to add at least one in total time, a full-time employee, and then have the budget for it. But I was just wondering, it might be something you guys talk about with your goals, or even a strategic plan if it comes to, but maybe like a 5-year prospect, that might be something looking into. And I'm just wondering if you 5 thought that maybe that is something looking into.
I can't give you an answer personally right now because I really haven't done any research about it. But I thank you for bringing it up, and I think that you're right. It's something we should look at. If other districts are, maybe it's right for us, maybe not. But
I know you do somewhat of a full day pre-K, like with my daughter, for example, maybe like halfway through the year, take a handful of students, and Mrs. Kenyon works with them 2 days out of the 5 after school, so they're there for a full day. That was most beneficial. And, maybe even just shooting on an idea, if, the kids, the first half of the year had half-day pre-K, and then when the second half of the year came around, you switched to full. I know that'd be tough, but, I just think, personally speaking, especially with, it seems like kindergarten is the new first grade. So if you use that logic, pre-K is the old kindergarten. So why not look into making it full day?
thank you for your comment. Any other?
Hi, Lynn Holcomb. I just have a question that I'm not sure how the conversation goes. Wondering how, and this might be more for Bill, but wondering how teacher resources and maximum class sizes are determined. Reason being, just came home, son in 8th grade has 30 students in his Spanish class. So we've been very privileged as a small school for our students to have small classes, and that was a bit of a surprise to me. So it led me to believe, and I was coming here tonight anyway, to just ask, what is that conversation about class size and teacher resources? I know it all relates back to budget, but this seems very out of line with how we have what we've been expected, and I don't know if I missed a conversation about resources, but just wondering when those conversations happen and how teachers and how parents are supposed to be ready and aware of that, so it's not a surprise.
So it's all based on the schedule and the availability of sections. Like I know with Spanish with Miss King, we had the one section of 30 kids. We tried to split it. Unfortunately, because kids are in different offerings, that those cells don't align. So we couldn't split it. And if we did split it, there would be 28 in one section, 2 in another section. It just doesn't work that way as far as the schedule goes. We try to balance as well as we can, but some of the sections are out of balance this year.
Yeah, I just
They
feel
are.
like he's in every class with 25 to 30 kids, and
I mean, Mrs. Lehman has her biggest class this year in
in
20 years.
Yeah, I think
Our
English
middle
might be
school
the smallest.
numbers have ballooned.
Yeah.
They're large numbers. And for some reason this year, when we went to split and balance, the numbers just didn't work.
Yeah, I mean, I totally respect that. I
Yeah.
understand the multitude of what you're trying to balance, and I think the challenge just becomes all classes aren't equal as well. And
Yeah.
my son is part of that
Yeah.
class, but
Yeah.
it's very heavy boys. It's a lot of boys in that grade, and honestly, I'm just really concerned about what the learning environment is going to be across the span for those 5 classes. And I'm fortunate to have a child who cares about learning, but for him to come home on the first day of school pretty discouraged about what his classroom layout looks like. I mean, excited about some of the teachers and opportunities,
Right.
but I mean, this is just an uphill battle to try to keep 8th grade boys interested in education when they're in a class of pretty much ranging 25 to 30 kids. And that just hasn't, I mean, some school districts, that's what they know from kindergarten.
Right,
And
that's the
so
norm.
it's not a transition, but I think this is going to be a challenge for the teachers in addition to the kids in terms of the point we're at. And I think it's, I think I was taken aback. Usually, like, I try to be pretty aware of what's going on, and this was a bit of a shock. I mean, I don't know how many classes are actually that large. I don't know that there's any classes at HCS that have 30 kids.
That is the max right now. We had another section of Spanish that had 29, and we were able to split that and balance it. Sue's class of 25 now. So class sizes this year are larger than what we've been used to in the past. You know, our average has been 13 to 17. But this year it just seems like we have some anomalies, and they tried to balance and create sections and it just didn't work.
And that's, I mean, that's one of the strategic plans, or one of the committees you've talked about, is the secondary master scheduling, and this is part of what that's all about,
Right.
is being able to,
You gotta be able to look at what have you done? How's that working for you today, to quote Dr. Phil? And what are the other options that are available to deal with the current situation? So clearly, Mr. Dowsland will be on that committee of parents, teachers, and I even want to use someone who is outside of the organization with extensive master scheduling experience, so that and I think both of you can help us with that. In fact, I had a conversation so that you have that outside look as well as the inside expertise in scheduling. Scheduling it's almost like finding a really good math teacher. Everyone can't teach calculus. I mean, a lot of math teachers, but everyone can't teach calculus. So.
And it comes down to a staffing issue at some point too. You know, we have one Spanish teacher, and a lot of kids are opting to take Spanish. You know, our French numbers are not as large. And so when you look within that structure, and you know, if a student is taking band, chorus, and orchestra, and that's opposite of an offering, you try to move, and it affects everything else within that schedule. So there's so many different factors,
moving parts.
Right.
moving
but-
parts.
I'm sorry, but I think that becomes a question, like, I made Brad take, and this isn't just about me, I think there's other parents just not represented here tonight, or maybe haven't had the conversations with their kids yet. Like, I honestly would have been, you know, for some students, something else might have been optional if there was a conversation, you know, so it might have been that he doesn't want to be in orchestra anyway, I'm just making him.
Right.
So, you know, if that were a question, you know, I was making him do an art. So, I mean, honestly, I would much rather he has a positive exposure to language, which is so critical to be employable and mobile in our society, that's what I feel like was missed, that if there had been an opportunity for parents to understand what the challenges were and be able to partner with the school on looking at alternative options when the quality of education was questioned, I think that would have been helpful. I don't know if it would have solved it, but I think there are some things that are more extracurricular than, I mean, the core academics have to be the core academics. And so and for some people, art, music, and chorus aren't going to, you know, the music and chorus aren't going to be negotiable, but for some families that might have been, I mean, he's played every instrument, people in band, rather than orchestra, if that would have given some additional opportunities. And I'm usually really proud of Hamilton, and I still am, but I'm disappointed by what his academic opportunities look like this year. With just the the size of classes and having him been with a group of kids that he's been with since kindergarten, those, I mean, good luck to you guys as teachers. Those are challenging dynamics just with the group of boys and the size that are going to be in those classes. I think it's just going to be challenging.
Thank you.
Holly White. So the situation that we're in right now with large class sizes have very little to do with the structure of the schedule. There are a couple of ways we could change our schedule. We could have, the straight classes like many schools do, and it wouldn't change the size of the classes. When I began here, nearly all of the elementary classrooms had 3 per grade. I, for many, many years, always had 3 sections of 7, 3 sections of 8th grade English. Mr. Jarko had 3 and 3, pretty much everybody did. And when enrollment began declining, they were all one by one cut back to 2 sections and 2 classrooms. But I do believe that we have to reevaluate and proactively, not reactively, when some of the class sizes get larger. We've been cutting and cutting and cutting, and the only thing we've really been adding to is special ed, which I know is a need and I support that. But I do think we need to reevaluate when class sizes are larger, whether the general education classrooms need to be split into more sections to have the smaller class sizes.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Quick one. I'm not sure if you'll be able to answer this, Dr. A, maybe you can. This strategic planning concept, how it was displayed last month is kind of like, take for example like a 5-year plan, everybody's involved in it, there's your plan, here's what we're doing. How does that work when situations arise where there needs to be a change in the plan? How adaptable is it? And does it become a problem that, everybody was all in on this 5-year plan, but now something has to change, and can you change it? Are you weary of changing it because it was such a community project in the beginning? How does that concept work? How much leeway is there in strategic planning for issues that arise?
I can say one thing and then
Yeah, that's fine.
from what I understand, one of the first things you do in strategic planning is decide what's important to you. And then decisions that come after that are driven by that.
Right, and so, a plan is just that. I was reading something this week, and it said decisions that were made based on yesterday's market conditions are already outdated if the market conditions have changed. So you always want to be able to have flexibility because things happen and things change. And so a strategic plan gives you a roadmap. Just like if you're driving to Canada and you're using your GPS, there's an accident, you'll have to go around and make some adjustments. So I think, the leadership team and the board never loses their ability to make decisions based on current realities. And so flexibility, like anything else, is always something that you have to keep in mind. So, but,
It's just a new concept. I was kind of curious how it plays into that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, if there are no other comments at this particular time, we have several personnel items on the agenda. The first are resignations. I need a motion to accept the resignation of Andrea Kime as part-time .5 FTE art teacher effective August 23rd, 2016, as recommended by the superintendent. Any discussion? All in favor? A motion to accept the resignation of Linda Little as bus driver effective October 28, 2016, with sincere appreciation for services rendered to the district. Any discussion? All in favor?
Do we have somebody that replaced her already, or?
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. A motion to accept the resignation of Kimberly,
Conway.
okay, as teacher aide effective September 6, 2016, with sincere appreciation for services rendered to the district.
Move.
Also. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We have some appointments. Motion to appoint Jennifer Lobster as permanent computer services technician effective August 26th, as recommended by the superintendent.
Move.
Should be.
Any discussion? All in favor? A motion to appoint Payal Patel as a per diem substitute math teacher effective September 1st, 2016 at step 1 of the salary schedule as recommended by the secondary principal and superintendent. Any discussion?
So why a per diem long-term substitute?
Great question. It's simply a matter of certification and the process that the teacher is going through with BOCES. We do not anticipate anything, but by law, you have to have a valid New York State teaching certificate to be in a probationary position. Any day now, but
Yeah,
not in New
saw that.
York State. We have it in Jersey.
Right, she's from
Right.
New Jersey. Got it.
So we do not anticipate any problems,
Okay.
and it works out just fine.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Motion to appoint Stephanie Mahoney as probationary music teacher effective September 1st, 2016 at step 3 of the salary schedule as recommended by the secondary principal and the superintendent.
Move.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Recommendation to appoint the following mentors as recommended by the principals and the superintendent. Liz Merrow, Nicole Anno, Donna Stanistreet, Monica Chamberlain, Kim Cunningham, Annette Silver, Sue Lehman, and Mike Cook.
Cold.
Mike Cook,
It says Mike Cook.
Should
So
say
it is-
Mike
it should
Cook.
say Mike
Should
Cook.
say
Yeah, you're right.
Okay, Mike Coldren.
I'll move.
Okay,
I'll second.
any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to approve the following as members of the 2016-17 APPR committee. Dr. Alston, Bill Dowsland, Kevin Ellis, Rick Hansen, Mark Arquette, Sue Lehman, Dan Raines, Meg Rose, Holly White, and Gina Torrey.
I'll move.
Second?
Any discussion? No? Congratulations, you guys, on that one.
Is that the short story?
Yeah, I think so.
I was gonna
Motion-
say, when you said discussion, can we ask them why they?
No, I was.
All good things, it's very important.
Make it sound like an honor. Motion to approve Rachel Jackson as substitute teacher and/or teacher aide as recommended by the elementary principal and the superintendent.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. A motion to approve the recommendation of the Committee on Special Education and Preschool Special Education.
I'll move.
Second?
If anyone has any discussion, that would be an executive session. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. A motion to approve the following combined sports for the 2016-17 school year as recommended by the athletic director. Field hockey with Morrisville Eaton, JV soccer with Morrisville Eaton, Morrisville Eaton boys soccer, varsity JV, and modified with Hamilton.
Say,
I'll move.
I'll second it. and then we
Any
can
discussion?
discuss it.
Okay,
field hockey, we have no one,
right.
so that shouldn't be on there.
We have one modified
We
player.
don't have
Well,
any varsity.
this is modified.
We don't have any
This is
varsity.
modified, yeah.
And then, are we approving girls soccer?
Girls JV.
JV.
Was that on the list?
Mhm.
So that was an update that that wasn't on the original agenda. That's what I was just making sure.
It was on today.
Yeah, but
It was on yesterday. It was on yesterday. too.
Wasn't on Monday.
But again,
It's like,
because,
wasn't on Monday.
because there wasn't enough to have the full team here, it's combined with.
Yeah,
We
so
know-
that was a late addition. We thought we
Yeah.
were gonna host it here, but because we only had 10 players commit, we had to make basically the adjustment at the start of the season after last month's board meeting.
So how big is the combined JV team at Morrisville?
We sent 8 players over there,
Okay,
and that gives them the ability to have varsity and a JV
That's
team.
good.
okay.
That's good.
And
Because we didn't have any, did we have any varsity players for girls soccer? Some of those 8 were,
2 of our players
would have been varsity, okay.
was sent over specifically for varsity.
Okay,
And then initially upon signups, I had 14 sign up with the thought that 13 was basically my cutoff number to have 2 substitutes
right.
in that case. And after, traveling, a couple moved over and said they wanted to sign up for volleyball instead. And then that left us with 10 at the end of the day. So in Fortunately, we'll revisit it again next year with our modified numbers are good. And I think our girls, as evidenced from our forum announcements this morning, you know, they're playing at the varsity level. Even our 8th grade girls, we had 2 8th graders score goals in the varsity game last night for Morrisville, which, you know, it shows very promising. So,
How many modified girls are there?
15, I believe, 15, with a good sized 6th grade team coming up. And ASO numbers at U10 and U12, both of those girls teams have 2 teams in Morrisville, which is, or here in Hamilton, excuse me. So that's promising as well.
Okay, any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we have a discussion item, athletic transportation.
Sure. I put this on the agenda to have a conversation about, I met with Mr. Dowsland and Mr. Cater to discuss that there are some parents who want transportation for students in Hamilton on JV football to be bused to modified to be bused to Morrisville. And so I asked Mr. Downsland to come with some historical point of view and Mr. Cater to talk about it a little bit, and then we can have a discussion and I can run some of the implications. And Matt obviously has some history here too, so it's just a discussion. There's no actions to be taken, but I think we want to praise you of what we understand to be going on. So we'll start with Mr. Cater, and I appreciate your comments.
Yeah, thank you. Currently, with the addition of JV soccer and sending the additional 8 girls over there, we were looking at initially, we got some discussion from parents about the possibility for modified football only. I mean, we were sending 10 people over, and initially, you know, there's 10 7th graders, I should say, that are going over there, which is a large group for us. So I think those 10 parents, you know, they're very busy, so they were, you know, inquiring about that ability to provide some busing. And I think looking at it now with the additional JV and varsity players, which are all very young, on a daily basis, we have about 18 students that we're looking at that are getting their way back from Morrisville. The nice thing is that Morrisville, they send 7 players for boys soccer here, 3 varsity, 4 modified players, but they provide that busing here, which allows us to have and they get out earlier than we do, so it allows our players to jump on their bus and ride that back for our combination agreements. So today, for example, we had 23 players, varsity, modified football, as well as JV and varsity soccer, riding the bus back to Morrisville for their sports. Now, the object is, and the desire from the parents that I'm getting, the questions are, you know, what's the possibility of us having a late bus that only takes those students from Morrisville, but brings them back to our school, not drops them off at home or anything like that, so that they can be picked up here in our parking lot rather than at Morrisville School.
So some historical perspective from Mr. Dowsland, who also served as an athletic director, and Mr. Crum.
Sure. In the past, we've had these same requests for ice hockey, girls swimming at Sherburne, ice hockey when we combined with Cazenovia, and golf at Waterville. And logistically, at the time, the board decided to deny those requests. So there's been, I think, 3 requests in the past, 3 different sport requests in the past to bus students. And logistically, it just didn't work because of the hockey. You had basketball, you had volleyball at the time in the winter. It just didn't work. There wasn't a bus driver, and the cost, the board didn't want to encumber the cost of that. It wasn't budgeted for at the time.
From a budgetary standpoint, it's not real significant. I think the bigger concerns would be on the logistical side of things, as you
Yeah.
combine more teams, like as Phil said, if it's modified football players, then it's a set schedule as far as bringing the modified kids back. You throw in soccer, you throw in other, if there were field hockey in this case, you have differing end times of practices. That's something that would have to be worked out, but as you can see here, you just took action. Combined sports is becoming more common, both here and there. And I think as we get to the point where we have more kids that are involved in this is something that needs to be considered. However, what are the implications going to be if we have requests coming from parents or from students that are participating in some of the individual sports? So again, like Bill said, swimming in Sherburne, golf in Waterville, we may be in a situation where we just can't do it. We don't have the vehicles, we don't have the drivers because of either the distances or the scheduling. So, it's something the four of us have talked about. I think it's a legitimate thing to look at with the number of kids that we're sending there. But we need to consider what the implications would be in other seasons, other sports, other locations.
Again, logistically, it just seems like you've got different sports ending at different times. You've got game day, you've got practice day, you've got, it seems like it would be consistent for those 2 weeks before school starts, and then after that, it would be a melee. I don't
Well,
know.
I can tell you from coaching at Morsel Eaton and having a similar situation, because at that time, we played at the elementary school and all the kids were getting bused from the high school. And field hockey did that, boys and girls soccer did that. And yes, they ended at different times, but we ran it like a bus schedule.
Yeah.
This is when this bus is going to leave. And as a coach, I knew I needed to have practice done for my kids to get on that bus.
Yeah.
And I think there's a critical mass in numbers. I mean, if it's one kid, I can understand why we're saying we're not going to do that. I mean, it's unfortunate, but I guess I also would question right away is if this Morrisville bus is coming, dropping their kids here, and then going back to Morrisville, when it comes to do they come and get their kids back here again? Do they come and pick them up from here?
No, that's
No?
that's the
Okay,
thing.
so I should
Actually,
say
one of
it's
the
not.
parents,
We
I
could
think,
Should
trade
we
off
flip
that.
it? Yeah.
That's not the BOCES bus, is it? That goes from Morrisville, drops kids on?
No.
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 I think that if we're encouraging the combination of sports, that we need to really look at driving. I think that it's a lot to ask of the parents. I think it's very difficult to get there and back with schedules. And I think that if we want our children to be part of these sports, to help them grow in that part of their education, that we should really look at helping them with some of this.
Are we paying any of the coaching fees for the kids that are going over to Morrisville?
Correct me if I'm wrong, I think we pay a portion of a soccer fee and football. And as well as we provide the transportation to and from all the way football games for them.
I'm just thinking that might be a way to offset the cost. If we're not spending as much on coaches, could that money go to sending our kids to their coaches?
One of the things, excuse me, one of the things that we have to just be aware of is what we do for one, are we willing to do for everyone else? And is that sustainable and affordable? So, we can't say no to baseball and yes to football. And then the other question comes, and I'm not for it or against it, but I need us to think about all these implications. What about varsity? Right now we're talking about modified, and there's a rationale, but as a parent, not of a high school student yet, I could make the case that if my kid is going to Steelers Valley for basketball, that you should get my kid over there too, or get him back, and so that, and then we probably would have to have some kind of guiding policy that determines whether or not, is there a number, is there not a number, can we do it all, under what circumstances? So there are a lot of implications to making a decision that's why we're just discussing it now. So if the request comes, we could, have some more conversation and even study it in a subgroup and look at the actual implications and then see what the impact really is. For example, one of the things we could do right now, if this was just magic. We could say, okay, we can use a bus driver and this was the problem. But when you start talking about other sports, we don't necessarily have 3 or 4 people available to do a run, to meet all of our sports needs. And so those are implications we have to really take a good, hard study at, and before we would even be prepared to say, okay, we should do it.
So is it fair to say that this is unlikely to be solved for this football season, but that it's a conversation that will continue? I mean, is that?
Well,
Well, it could be, I mean, it could be solved this year.
I mean, I think what you're saying is we need to come up with what the parameters of that policy are. I mean, I wouldn't say that the policy is if your kid plays a sport at another school, they get transportation. It's if we have this many kids within this many miles. You know, I mean, some kid wants to do fencing at East Syracuse, Manoa. Well, I'm sorry, we're not sending you to East Syracuse, Manoa. But if we did a 10-mile radius around Hamilton, and if we have X number of kids that want to go, that are part of that team, and again, if we're encouraging and supporting this, and I think there is some savings that we're not maintaining fields or courts, or we're not paying full salary for coaches, that we might be able to incur that. We need to look at driver schedules though, because as Dr. Austin said, if you've got a game day, if you've got a day that has multiple games, you may not have buses.
Right.
Or drive.
Well,
Is
and
it
it-
a bus?
and it's, you're gonna see, the biggest thing with that, Paul, is gonna depend on the season. The winter varies extremely because of different start times. The modified activities start 4 to 4:30, but JV and varsity are later in the evening. So if you had a day where you had an away modified game and an away varsity game, you're gonna have 2 totally different departure times. And if you're trying to transport to Sherburne for swimming and to Pads for hockey,
I guess,
that may be difficult.
That
Right, so what's-
goes back to the idea that you set the policy based on what the parameters are that we're willing to have a bus go, which is X number of people and X number of miles. If because of different start times, that means they don't meet the minimum number of kids, well, I'm sorry, we can't afford to do that. So if you had 5, let's say you set the number at 10, if you had 5 modified kids in basketball and 5 in varsity going to another school, well, there's only 5 at a time going, that's not enough to justify a bus.
Is it feasible to think about getting like a little committee going in school right now? Like somebody in business, somebody in transportation? Phil?
Well, we've already done that.
You've already,
I mean,
you've already
I
done
think,
that?
I think more of the issue is the fall season is the main one that is the issue, and that's our main combining season. You know, winter, yes, hockey,
How
winter,
many kids
boys
for hockey?
swimming.
Yeah.
Right, how many kids for
It's
hockey?
been low lately.
At this point, probably 3,
Yeah.
1 swimmer. So I mean, in sheer numbers, it might not make sense to do that for those students, and that's, I think that's maybe the issue is numbers wise, and we continue to reevaluate our sports seasons on a year-to-year basis, be it numbers, and like I didn't expect our JV girls to go over there this year, but then it adds that additional numbers that, you know, I guess from my perspective being a parent too, I can see, yeah, it might be nice to provide that. I mean, I think it might be on a year-to-year basis. So the trouble is, you know, we're starting late in this process right now. And I think this year is the main one I think parents are interested in, as their kids are the young ones. The varsity level, some of those kids are starting to drive themselves, so now we have athletes that are driving themselves back and forth on certain cases,
Which is its own risk.
which is his own risk. But I think it's those younger levels that are the ones, their parents are maybe not as far up in their professional career, and they're looking at ways to, I mean, maybe save money as far as that goes too. So maybe that's why they're more needy and more asking for these services themselves.
So what are the, so if we were to consider something for this year, what are the winter implications? You said swimming and hockey, so 4 students basically.
Right
And
now,
what are the spring implications?
there's no combined sports in our spring.
So we're talking really the
Fall.
fall,
Fall.
and potentially, you know, the winter, but that cohort is so small, completely going to opposite ends of the county.
Right.
Okay.
And I think the large sports, football being a large sport as it is, and we have a big group of 6th, 7th graders whose parents have been involved in this flag football program and have kind of brought it up from this youth level when they were 3rd and 4th grade. Now they're at that level that they're all still interested in football. They're looking, and there's still some flag football leagues going on. So, looking forward, do we think this is going to be a need on a year-to-year basis? I don't know, but for some reason this group is a big group. They're very interested in football. Moving forward with 10, if they continue, players next year in 8th grade. The next year after that, they'll be in 9th grade. When you keep those 10 players, is it something that lasts maybe 4 years? And then we have to reevaluate it? I don't know. I don't
think
see
if
it.
we consider it year to year like we do the sports.
Right,
I
so,
mean-
so how do we move forward? Do we say,
good.
okay, yes, we're interested in,
No.
in hearing this? Do we say, propose a propose a plan, propose a policy and bring it back to us? What's
But
the,
then that's another month.
That's
how do,
another
well,
month,
not
and-
necessarily. I mean, we can call a special meeting if,
No, I don't know that the
Like,
board.
it doesn't even need to do that.
You don't
It's
need
not
the
our,
board
it's not our
action.
decision.
right,
It's
so we
something
just
that-
need to support, say we would support it if we can find a physically and sensible,
Right, so I think, we're just bringing it to the board because it's a community concern and it could come up and, under the no surprises doctrine, we want to be in front of it. What we can do at the next step would be, let's sit down, explore all of the implications and let the board know, here are the implications, right? If we want to go in this direction, here's the kind of policy you would need in place. Kind of like what Trustee Lehman mentioned, like it will be during this season, based on this amount of numbers and no conflicts. It's got to be really thought through so that you're not in a position where we're guided by, on a whim, rather we're guided by policy, and we can always articulate a point of view that a reasonable person can say, that's
It's
fair.
written broad enough
So-
to cover what we need,
But you
not
could-
sport specific,
But I
but
mean,
number
I
specific.
like that for a plan going forward, but how does that help?
I mean, you could make a
Things that we have
decision
going on
this
right now.
year
Well,
without that, right, pending.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
could make a
we can make a
decision,
decision.
but it's not the decision that will come up and
Right.
rear its head, it's the implications. And so one of the reasons why we're bringing it up, and I would not advocate rushing into saying, let's do something, is because we haven't
looked at it.
backstudied the implications, and we don't want those kinds. So that's what needs to happen, I think, at this point. We can sit down and run the implications and kind of say, okay, this is, we might can do this right now, or might not, but we'll have to sit down and go through it. So I'm not willing to commit right now. I don't think it would be prudent to say, we should do something other than
Continue the discussion.
to continue the discussion and look
Get
at
the
the
data.
options right now
Yeah, get the data.
that are on the table that would be prudent and obviously time sensitive, because we don't want to go a month, but we do want to get it right. If we want to measure twice, cut once.
And you wouldn't need board approval to do it, right? Okay.
No.
If there's a policy.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's
If
right.
there's a policy, obviously, yes, but, we wouldn't need approval to just
add the
to
button.
do it.
And I'm
if that's something.
I'm just gonna say out loud, I think that if there were this one-time approval to do it, that we should get a policy right away.
Right, okay.
Okay, under information and correspondence, we have a superintendent's update.
I think you,
There's a couple
Did
other
I
things.
miss something?
Yeah, we're
What
six
did I
minutes.
miss?
5.
Oh,
Michelle will jump
FFA.
over-
That's-
Missed that, Michelle will jump over the table.
Okay. That's right, we can't forget that one. Motion to approve the Hamilton FFA officer team of 8 students to attend a camp in the Adirondacks for an officer retreat on October 1st and 2nd, 2016. Mr. and Mrs. Bozzard will be chaperones. There will be no expense to the district other than the use of a bus.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
I actually ran into Miss Bozzer and asked her about this a little bit, and she said that they're going to this place as opposed to Camp Oswegatchie, which is typically an FFA camp up in the Adirondacks because of the cost, and because they want it to be more focused on making a game plan as opposed to the actual team building activities that are typically associated with Oswegatchie. So it sounds like they have a great plan and that they're going to use their time wisely while they're there.
Any other discussion?
And the expense of that bus is part of their budget and all of those things and.
Yeah, Kevin's with it?
Okay.
Okay. All in favor? Okay. Now superintendent's update.
One more?
So once you
Yeah,
use six,
you
six.
added
Oh, I
6,
added
Formation
something.
policy committee.
You're gonna jump off the counter, attack yourself.
That's a discussion.
Okay, we have a couple of changes that might affect some policies this year. There are changes in the regulations for fire drills and some safety considerations in the building. We saw a little bit of that, and we do have policies about that, so we may have reviews for that. We have several policies that we have to do a read on, and those have to be scheduled. We have a couple of other policies that are going to be on the table because they're timely right now, and it sounds like we may be looking at another policy with the sports team. And I really think the way that we should do policy, especially since we have a policy service and we want to be able to keep our local voice in terms of policy, is to have a policy committee. Almost every other district I know of has one. I think that that would consist of 2 people from the board. It could be more. We would announce when we meet, and it would involve doing research. We can do research through NISBA and through our policy service if we are looking to change policies. And I think the first one we would work on would be policy number 1020. So, or 1022 or 1024. But is anybody interested in doing that?
That thumbs up meant Paul.
But I thought you got the number right.
Oh.
I did. I said the right one in 2 wrong ones. Anybody interested in being on a policy committee that would look at those?
I'm already working on the one, so.
I'll work with you. Okay, and I'm interested in doing it too. And, you know, possibly I think the board would want to be a committee as a whole on some of these issues, especially the one we talked about tonight. But we would obviously be working with Dr. Alston
Right.
too, so.
The intent of the policy committee would then be to divide up the work, if there are
It-
other, you would divide
What it does is.
the rest of the work amongst
What
us,
it,
not
yeah,
just.
what it does is, I mean, when you get a policy to read, you've never seen that policy before, you
Right.
haven't done any research on it. What a policy committee does is they do the research, they recommend changes. So usually the first time a policy comes up for review, the board reads it once. The second time it comes up for review, often it will have some things that are marked out and then new things that are in. I mean, I kind of was the policy committee last year when we
You
did
were,
the,
yep.
when we did the retention. But so the second read is usually with the changes. And the whole board can look at the old policy and the recommendations for changes together and talk about them and decide whether they're going to adopt the new one. So it just makes it a lot more efficient if you have 1 or 2 people who are doing that, rather than just kind of accepting what's put in front of you or accepting what you get from a policy service. So I think that's great, and maybe going ahead, you know, we'll get more people on certain policies. A lot of these are just pro forma. We just have to read them once every year. But law says we have to do it. So, okay.
Who we have on the policy
Me
committee?
and Paul. That brings us to our second opportunity for committee participation.
No,
Where did I skip?
Superintendent.
Just give us the superintendent.
Okay. I want this meeting to go fast. So superintendent, make it quick.
Said the word.
Superintendent's update.
Very well, I'll give you the quick version. Our water testing came back safe. That went out to the entire community and will be on the blog as well. We worked with A&P water testing and came back. We tested 24 fixtures throughout the school building, including all water fountains, and the lead levels came below 20 parts per billion, which is the level the EPA has set. Okay. No more on that. We have in the audience tonight Ms. Jen Lobsher, who I wanted to just have her meet the board. Please stand up and welcome you. You appointed her to her title tonight. In 3 months, I'll ask her to give a presentation to the board on the status of where we are with technology and what she's working on. I wanted to just inform you that we had a very smooth opening. We're very happy. Teachers seem to be happy. Kids seem to be happy. Today went very smoothly. The last couple of days have gone smoothly. I'm going to keep you posted on enrollment. As of today, we have, and it'll be in your weekly update with hard numbers by grade. We have pre-K through 5, 286 students, 6 through 12, 279 students, for a grand total of 565 students, pre-K through 12. That's important. And the final thing is on October 20th, I'm going to do a community book read. That's posted on the web. It's open to anyone on The Smartest Kids in the World and How They Got That Way by Amanda Ripley. That is just yet another way. It serves two purposes. It serves multiple purposes. When we model our love for reading, our kids see it. And we talk about important things like education, how kids see it. And it's a way to bring people under the tent and talk about something that's important. I have experience with this book, and I've done it before as a principal, and there's absolutely no downside, just good stuff. So pleased to report that it appears APPR negotiations are done. I'll ask Ms. Monty to sign when we get to my office. And just want to thank the APPR committee.
Yeah.
And that was a lot, and we're done with it. So it'll be sent up to the state within 24 hours, and then the ball is in their court. That's my superintendent's update.
Can I ask a question? Is there more on the website about the community book read, or how
No.
does that really work? What
Right.
does that really mean?
Right, so right now, there's just that, because I wanted to get school open, but I wanted to put it out there. I just wanted to put it out there for people who are regularly engaged in our website.
Right.
What happens, once we kind of get through the first couple of days, there'll be more information and a link where to buy the book. We'll probably buy a
Go
few
through the
books and
Colgate
keep them,
bookstore.
on how, good idea, keep them in-house. Colgate Bookstore, the link to Amazon. Then you send something out to everyone in the community, saying this is what we're doing. We ask our principals to market and promote, and this is the process I went through before. And you know, whoever shows, and it'll be people who are interested, and just it's a great conversation piece, particularly that book.
Okay.
For information, I'm going to just throw out a couple dates. On Monday night, the congressional candidates from the 22nd District are going to be speaking, and you're all invited if you want to sign up. All three of them are going to be there, and they're going to be taking questions. On the 20th, the Rossetti Center is having an open house, and that's a ton of fun. That's great. We have a lot of students that go to BOCES, and you know, when you go in there, they grab you and take you around, and it's great. On the 22nd, the State Commissioner of Education, Mary Ellen Elia, was supposed to be talking to board members at OMH BOCES. She's pulling back. I don't think she can come, but there will be a member of the Board of Regents. So that's the 22nd.
Terry, if I could just add, those same three congressional candidates will be here at HCS. And this is a public announcement. Here at HCS on Thursday, October 13th. It's actually the same night as our October board meeting. Hamilton Rotary is hosting a Hamilton Forum in the HCS auditorium with those three congressional candidates at 7 o'clock. So they'll be here as well.
So
We should start at 5:30.
So our auditors, I believe, come that.
Yeah,
That's
so
right.
we
Should start,
Yeah,
we could start at 5, I think it would even be better.
The
Well, the auditors
auditors
are coming
coming
at
at 5. So we should start the board
They're
meeting as soon as
usually
they're done.
half hour or so.
So maybe we say 5:30.
5:30.
I can have Debbie change that.
Let's do
Okay.
that.
Yeah,
Let's
with an
start
intent that the
It's
board
going to
meeting will
be
end at 7.
Very,
Those are
very
the
crowded
candidates.
parking lot.
Okay, good, that's good.
So we're talking information, kind of a question. We've talked before about on the website when things are posted that there'd be a date so that we know when things are updated. Because there's times like I'm trying to keep up on what's happening. I'm like keep checking for the Hamilton International Student thing and didn't see anything. And all of a sudden it's there and I'm like, I don't know when it was there and when I missed it. So if there's just a
No
way
date,
to
date.
automatically post the date when something's added to the website, because then when I scroll down, I can just go, okay, I've seen to this date. Maybe it's just as Jennifer said, that
understand,
there's
yeah.
like,
I don't understand the question.
Like a
when,
timestamp.
a timestamp when we post
Timestamp.
things on the
When we
webpage,
post
so we
it.
know when things came up.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Problem solved.
I'm liking you, Jen.
That's funny.
Okay, we have our second opportunity for community participation. Travis?
Sounds about right. To touch base on what you're talking about, transportation, my thoughts, just quickly on it, are, I think Ellen, you touched on it, you're probably gonna have students driving back, inexperienced drivers, you're probably gonna bring kids back with them that can't drive, you're gonna have rainy, dark nights. It's just a recipe for disaster. So just keep that in your thoughts as you do it, because God forbid anything were to happen with kids getting in an accident way back, you might look back on it and be like, well, if we just had a bus at Morrisville every day at 5 o'clock to bring back kids. But I know the struggles that come with it. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. If you do it for 4 people at this school, probably legally you could say, well, you have to do it for me for here. You probably need a policy for that. But I just want to say, yes, like you kind of touched on, just keep in mind that even though you're just gonna have the opportunity for
Okay, thank you.
that.
Okay, if there's no other comment, then I need,
Is there another
is there another
comment?
comment?
Rick Hansen.
Rick Hansen.
You recognized the resignation of Linda Little earlier
Yeah,
as a bus driver, and just thanking her for her service. She drove me all over creation for years and years, and I think there's a couple of folks that maybe she drove around in here. And Ms. Jacobson here, I think is the only person I coached that maybe was on the bus with her. But sometimes my exit from athletic events wasn't too smooth. I'd get on the bus and Linda would be on there and, she'd ask me what I was canning, or how my dog was, or how my kids were. She would bring things back into perspective. Or she would stop on Route 12 at that runaway truck ramp and open the door to read that. And it would just make my head explode. Every time, and so,
That's great.
just recognizing her resignation just wasn't enough for me. But I know she had a few moments down the stretch here, but she was just a sweetheart. So.
I'm glad.
Well, Rick, we're gonna call on you, and, when we were twisting her arm to stay on as a sub, we're gonna.
Okay, yeah.
No, I'm
driving.
Anyway,
I'll see her
she-
now.
I am
Oh,
really
I
glad
see,
you
yeah.
said that,
She's
because
driving
so
me
often that little sentence, and this is one of those times, with
She's-
sincere appreciation just is not.
She just
She's great. Great
Well,
attitude.
always bring it in perspective sometimes when I hopped on that bus and kids just didn't perform the way you thought they did. She'd start talking about the real world, so.
You gonna see her tomorrow? Will you see her this week?
I probably won't, but
If you see her, tell her it's more than sincere appreciation.
On that note, maybe we should work at making that sentence a little stronger for and making sure that somebody in the school gives us a sentence so that we can recognize publicly and have something that can be on record for good. Because I think there's a lot of teachers that have, retired and that line just doesn't cover it. So I think that would be a nice move.
It was great for me.
on our part.
Travis.
Kind of touching on that, does Hamilton have a yearly bruncheon for retiring?
Yeah.
Or, so they are recognized?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
There's the opportunity for the public to come
Yeah.
and give their thanks?
Well, not
Not the
publicly.
public.
Oh, it's not a public
No.
one?
Not publicly, no, we do it well, it depends on the timing. In this case with Linda, we've just found out recently and she's leaving us in the middle of the year, so it's sort of a quick turnaround. But typically when it's anticipated, we do recognize all of our employees departing the district for whatever reason at our end of the year luncheon, but not with a public event.
And I'm not saying it needs to be public, but there is a
Recognition.
recognition. Gotcha.
Any other comments? Okay, can I get a motion to adjourn to executive session? Where we should take the time to discuss the employment of a particular individual?
I'll second.
Any discussion?
All in favor?
Aye.
I know.
Debbie,
Sweating.
Debbie is done. I'll email you tomorrow. I'll email her tomorrow
It's driving
with
me
the,
crazy right now.
so,
Put on country forms.
fine.
At CV.
I'm gonna put it in, yeah, okay. Just get it. I'm going to buy it. You take